Hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing. Brian Kelly here, the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan, coming to you from our Portland headquarters, otherwise known as my house. Kelly?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Saunders, Vice President of Policy and Engagement here at SBM, coming to you live from the SBM offices here in Lansing. We want to welcome you on behalf of our sponsor, Consumers Credit Union. Make sure to visit them at consumerscu.org for more information. We're also welcoming a new member today. So thank you to Harley Sherman of Clinton Township for joining our 32,000 plus members. We are thankful for all you do for Macomb County, and welcome to the team. So Brian, let's kick off the show with just a couple quick hits, if you will. October's inflation numbers seem to have bolstered the confidence of markets. So how do you think it impacts future Federal Reserve decisions on interest rates?
I would think that October's numbers actually give the Federal Reserve a lot of confidence in taking the pressure off their kind of prescripted plans for one more rate increase. In other words, probably a lot less likely now to raise interest rates again in December. So the reason I think that is because the inflation last month was 3.7. It was kind of like stubbornly stuck, especially the core inflation was stubbornly stuck in in kind of a holding pattern for several months. There wasn't like meaningful decreases for a while, and I think they were getting a little frustrated in talking about some additional rate hikes, and it dropped down from 3.7 to 3.2. So that's the headline inflation. The overall CPI number is the one that most people look at. However, what was also down was core inflation, which is about 4%. So that's when they take food and energy prices out, those fast moving commodities. The reason that the biggest reason that the headline inflation dropped was because of gas prices. And gas prices go up and they go down, but that core inflation coming down, I think we really would have given them some confidence. It's taken some patience for this fiscal policy. They're pretty aggressive on the interest rates. It's one of the few levers that they have to fight against inflation. And because of the shortage in housing and the shortage in people, in across America, but especially here in Michigan, that that really did result. Those shortages were working against the bringing down of inflation. So you had kind of a tension there, but over time, this monetary policy, I was pretty confident would win out, and it appears to have won out. I think I'm running out of battery now. Power just went out at my house, but I think we're good on the Wi-Fi signal for now.
It's a very exciting time today. We've got the Portland headquarters losing power. So let's shift gears a little bit on a topic we've covered extensively, which was the UAW strikes. We have seen a tentative agreement reached. You kind of rolled the dice and expected that to be accepted and approved. Can you give us an update on how that's going and where we stand today?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it looks like like all three contracts will be approved, but there is a surprise in that. The General Motors number was, or the General Motors approval was way closer than anybody expected. So Stellantis and Ford, as those they vote plant by plant, and as Stellantis and Ford were voting, um, really the yes versus no was like 2-1, so not particularly close. Quite a few no votes still. A little surprising when you consider 27% pay increases, the but at General Motors, there was a time when the yes votes were behind the no votes, but now they've got just a few more to go. Last time I looked at their tracker, it was like 53-47 in terms of the percentage, and not enough votes left to be counted for it to go upside down. So it looks like all three will be approved, and that will the restart of the industry, which has been underway now for several weeks, will continue uninterrupted. There are some big plants in the southern part of the country for General Motors that came in and really flipped that when the yeses went ahead. But there were some plants here in Michigan that went against ratification. Like, for example, the Delta plant right outside of Lansing. that local UAW local voted against ratification of it. So I think people were a little bit nervous about 24 hours ago, certainly 36 hours ago. But it looks like this one's going to land fine, and at least they'll be okay for the next three years.
Well, thanks for those updates. I think that we all are happy to have this behind us, specifically here in Michigan with the big three. We pay specific attention to this and ready to get everybody back to work and focused so that we can keep Michigan's economy on track. So, Brian, we actually have a special guest today that we will pivot to, and I will hand it back to you to introduce Susan.
All right, very good. So about once a month, we try to have somebody from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan on the briefing to talk about all the different things that they do. Now, we've got a long-term partnership relationship with Blue Cross, goes back literally decades between SBAM and Blue Cross, and there's so much that they're doing, and a lot of times it's how you business owners, you keep your heads down and you run your business and don't necessarily see all of the ancillary benefits that come along with your health insurance plan. So we want to make sure you make the most of it. So Susan Okonkowski from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan is joining us today, and we're going to talk about a partnership with Maven. And so let's just start with kind of an overview. Tell us about the suite of programs available through the Family Building and Women's Health Solution partnership with Maven.
Thank you so much for having me today, Brian, to talk about this. We're really excited at Blue Cross to have this partnership, number one, to offer to all of our employer groups on the fully insured side, and also as an option for our self-funded groups to buy up to. And we've built this partnership with Maven to really provide a holistic approach for family building and women's health. It's intended to really guide members through the entire family building journey, all the way from planning a family, going through fertility, the pregnancy journey, postpartum, having individuals return to work, and then of course parenting children, and leading women into the next phase of life with menopause. And so the partnership with Maven provides that whole suite of program tracks, and it's really there and intended to be there to provide members with a high quality, clinically appropriate and convenient care option that wraps around the care that they are receiving from their in-person providers. And it's really interesting because we've seen, a lot of, I would say, growth in this space. And I say growth in the sense that a lot of businesses are really trying to lean in and support their employees in this space of family building and also women's health. So excited to bring that partnership to life. We launched January 1st of this year, and all of our fully insured groups have access to a maternity program and also the menopause program.
So it sounds like actually I'm on the Governor's Population Council, and this idea of building population for the future, and Michigan, which had been shrinking for a few years now, really needs to find ways to turn around. So it really does kind of hit home, and the importance of family building and these types of services, and how what type of a maze it really can be to figure all of that out. And sometimes when a family is even kind of in a crisis type of a situation, to really navigate all of this, that just wanting to have it all turn out right. Maybe talk a little bit about then, does this replace provider network benefits? Is it alongside those? Does it have any impact on somebody who might say be receiving fertility services already, and they've got a provider? How does this interact with that?
It's a great question, Ryan. And the program is absolutely not meant to replace any sort of in-person care that members are receiving from their in-network providers. It truly is there as a way to supplement and wrap around that educational support and really kind of help members, guide them through this journey, ask extra questions if they need to, search through content. And the nice thing about it is it's available 24/7 And we know that as wonderful as all of the providers are out there, a lot of practices, are not able to service members 24 hours or to provide that support for them. So doesn't change a member's medical benefits at all, is not intended to replace, but really to be there to even help members with guidance to in-network providers if they don't have it, and also just supplement.
So how is, if somebody's watching this and either they feel like this is something that could really benefit them or their family, or they want to let their employees know about it who are covered by Blue Cross or Blue Care Network policies, how would they go about learning more and getting connected to it?
A great question. Also, we do have an employer toolkit that is out there for any employers listening, specifically, the fully insured groups, since you have access to maternity and menopause already, on our bcbsm.com/engage page. And there's a variety of different communications that are included within that toolkit. And also for our self-funded groups, we have toolkits. It is a buy-up for those particular employers. But it's actually really easy once a member is eligible to go through kind of the registration process. So eligible members will need to download the Maven app from either the Apple or Google Play Store, depending upon what kind of a device user you are, and register for an account. And we do share eligibility, so Maven already knows who is eligible for the program. So it's really easy for members to sign up. They can also, if they want to use their desktop, laptop, they can sign up through bcbsm.com/Maven family as well. And if you're like, well, that's a lot of information, we do also reach out. So Blue Cross has a lot of different engagement campaigns that we are running. So eligible members will also be notified through various type of campaign communications, whether that be through email, text message, and even direct mail if a member is not registered an email address with Blue Cross. So really trying to get the word out, have those eligible individuals know that they do have this amazing extra added resource available to them.
So let's finish up then maybe with just a little bit of what a member could expect to experience, like taking these steps. So getting signed up and they're eligible and they move forward. Just maybe just help to describe what the experiencing the solution might be like.
Sure. So once a member downloads the app, they sign up online. There's a very quick registration process they go through once they go into the Maven environment, and it will ask the member kind of a set of questions to kind of really personalize the program track that they are best suited for. So some of our employer groups, have all 5 of the different programs. Some employer groups where maybe they have maternity, it's going to ask you questions about, what week of pregnancy are you in? And by the way, I should also mention, Maven is not just for pregnant individuals. It is also there for partners that are with someone who is pregnant going through the experience, especially for first-time parents. Brian, we were talking about your children as well, and I think about the first time going through having a child. There's a lot of questions that they have along the way, and it's not just the pregnant individual; it's also that supporting partner. So they'll answer that quick set of questions, and it will kind of show the member their options within that program track. And the very first step that happens within the Maven environment is that a member is matched with a care advocate. And they can utilize that care advocate to help them schedule appointments. They can just ask the care advocate questions, or if they're interested, they can actually search through. There's 350 different provider types. And I say provider, they are virtual practitioners through the Maven app. These are not specifically Blue Cross providers, but they are virtual professionals, virtual care practitioners. So we think about OB-GYNs, mental health specialists. There's also pediatric sleep specialists, lactation consultants, reproductive endocrinologists. just a really wide array of professionals that members would have access to set up a virtual appointment with, again, 24/7. So if it's at 2 a.m. and they have a newborn at home and that mom is trying to figure out, like, how do I best feed this baby? Or maybe they have a toddler at home who keeps climbing out of the crib, very common occurrence with children at that age. And they're like, I just can't get this child to sleep. Instead of, going on Google and trying to find, a pediatric sleep specialist, they can actually just go into Maven, enroll to have a virtual consultation with one of those professionals 24 hours, 7 days a week. And again, it really is intended to be that wraparound care for what they're receiving from their in-network providers. In addition to like all of those virtual care professionals, there's also a lot of different content, communities, because there's a lot packed into, building a family, raising a family, and then also the newest program that we added with menopause, really supporting women in that phase of their life that sometimes they experience for up to a decade. There's a lot of really rich content and community that members have access through Maven.
Well, I continue to be amazed at the way that Blue Cross anticipates and meets needs of those who get their insurance through Blue Care Network and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. And I pay attention to these things, and yet always learning something new about the specialty and wraparound services for very specific needs that so many people have. So if you're watching, of course, you can always reach out to SBM directly, but also, Blue Cross has a fabulous app as well that you can download to your smartphone and keep track of so much of what they do. So I just want to thank you, Susan, for coming on and sharing this. Also, thank you to Blue Cross for the going above and beyond and kind of breaking breaking the expectation that people have that insurance companies don't care or are all about just the numbers and the bottom line, and yet these services continue to prove otherwise. Thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we are going to pivot to other news of the day. So Brian, let's talk about something we definitely extensively covered during the pandemic, and that is struggles with the unemployment insurance agency. But recovery is happening regarding the solvency of the employer-funded trust. Where do we stand today?
Yeah, I just saw some updated numbers in terms of where the trust fund is, and it's making some good progress. So just if you're to go back right before the pandemic, the state had finally paid off the debt from the Great Recession in the trust fund. So the trust fund went negative back in the Great Recession. And borrowed money from the federal government, and then the state, once the state's credit improved, the state borrowed money to pay off the federal government at a more favorable rate. That finally got paid off, and the trust fund was built up to like $5 billion in assets right before the pandemic. So as we started out 2020, of course, the unemployment insurance trust fund was used as a pretty broad safety net, as opposed to just a regular unemployment system, and it depleted the fund. There was some concern that it would go negative. It almost did, but it didn't quite go negative. It went from 5 billion to 275 million, and so about 5 billion to about a quarter billion. And so where does it stand today, though? About 2.3 billion. So it's not quite halfway back to what it was before. And by the way, what it was before was one of the top, probably about top 5 well-funded in terms of solvency trust funds and unemployment trust funds in the country. And then it got depleted so badly. But now it's just building up more and more all the time. And so there's some hope maybe it can get back to where it was, and kind of the threat of higher rates could be put aside. There's a lot of concern about what would happen coming out of the pandemic and what it would take to get that trust fund back in good shape. But it appears to be on its way. Again, we're not there. It's only less than halfway back, but it's actually a little higher than I would have expected it to be at this juncture.
That's good news, and we continue to advocate for that to be a priority to get it back where it should be here in Lansing for our part as well on your behalf. So let's switch and go national now. A federal government shutdown was averted, a first deliverable for a new Speaker of the House in Washington, D.C. Anything interesting about how that came about?
Well, I thought the most interesting thing was that the new speaker struck a deal that looked an awful lot like the one that got the old speaker kicked out. So it was a deal that required a lot of bipartisan support. In fact, significant amounts of, so Republicans have a slight majority in the House. This deal required a significant number of Democrats to come on board and support it, which happened, and it passed and pushes out the federal government budget for another 3 months. Friday, tomorrow was the deadline originally for when the previous deal that got former Speaker McCarthy kicked out of that office, when that deal ran out. So I haven't seen any indication that that Speaker Johnson's the new Speaker Mike Johnson, that he's in any danger because of this deal, that there are any calls to have him removed or anything like they did on McCarthy. So just kind of reading what could that possibly mean. Either maybe people are kind of looking at it realistically, and there really aren't a lot of options in the short term, or maybe it's just the fact that that he's kind of a neutral and almost anonymous person. He was on the leadership team. Speaker Johnson was on the leadership team before he became speaker, but the fact that he was so anonymous before, maybe people are going to kind of give him a longer leash, if you will, that a little more room to operate, get his sea legs under him, and see how he does. I would expect, though, looking forward 3 months when this runs out, that it will be a significantly more controversial and difficult process at that point. But we'll see.
Yes, the irony of it all. Let's talk about continue on the national front, but tie it back here at home. There was an announcement earlier today that Congressman Kelli is not going to seek re-election. So can you tell us what you think happens there and what we can anticipate, and what will be another hot congressional seat, as we have been covering the one closer to Lansing as well?
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about the 8th congressional district, which is the one that's Lansing centric, and that's a swing district. It was one of the most, it was the most expensive race in the previous election, in the last election cycle. Now, Alyssa Slotkin running for Senate to replace Debbie Stabenow, so that'll be another really hotly contested race, where you have Tom Barrett, the Republican, and Curtis Hertel, the Democrat, kind of the two likely nominees coming out of that. That was where everybody thought all the attention would be in Michigan, was that particular race, and it still will be. But when Congressman Kelli surprised everybody, and I don't know of anybody who wasn't surprised by this, announced that he would not be running for re-election, that puts another seat on the table that will be likely hotly contested. So Dan Kelli, of course, going, Kelli has represented this area for a very, very long time. So Dan Kelli has been in office for, I should have looked it up, but he's been in Congress for 10 plus years. But his uncle Dale Kelli was in office for, I don't know, 35 years or something in this area in Congress as well. So there's been a Kelli in that seat for a very, very long time. So it's really big for it to be like wide open. Like there's not an obvious person to run for the Republicans or the Democrats. Now, Kelli in his last re-election won by 10 points. So you might think, oh, why would this be an interesting election? But Republicans did not field a strong candidate, a well-funded candidate, and so Kelli kind of dominated that election. But Joe Biden only won this area by 2%. So it's really that would be more closely matched to what the regular kind of base based political makeup of the district is, and that will put it on everybody's radar screens. Now, both parties are going to have to come up with good candidates. Good candidates win elections, and then they'll have to have well-funded candidates. And these will be 2 seats in the mid-Michigan area, mid to a little bit to the east side, and that I expect that really the majority in the House of Representatives in the U.S. Congress Michigan will have a lot to say about that with these 2 seats on the table, and both open seats without incumbents running.
Right. So it's going to be a very exciting election year, and we will for sure keep you updated, but we'll see which names start to surface and keep you updated. But again, all eyes on Michigan once again to see what happens in these 2 districts and then beyond that. Let's switch to international now. President Biden was in California yesterday. President Xi from China was also there. Obviously, with rising tensions between both the U.S. and China, specifically on trade issues, were there any breakthroughs in the visit?
There really weren't breakthroughs on the business issues in particular. One thing in particular, like the reshoring, microchip production, and a lot of production. Like China's definitely feeling the impacts of U.S. manufacturing reshoring and building infrastructure that used to pretty much be a given to be in Southeast Asia. The certainly no changes in direction in that area, and I would be really surprised to see to see the U.S., which is really one of the few things that the Biden and the Trump administration have in common, is that their policies toward China, while that kind of frontline, the abrasiveness in which it's communicated might be different between the 2 entities, but the policies that underline the Trump administration, the Biden administration, actually fairly common or fairly similar. So it's not likely that the trade policies are going to change. Where they did make a little bit of progress, though, was on the fentanyl production, the chemicals that are used in the production of fentanyl that is causing so many deaths in the U.S. That was something that there was at least some preliminary agreements on what to do and to stem that. And there was still some criticism about the U.S. Supplying weapons to Taiwan, and but again, that's something that doesn't seem likely to me, that there's any kind of path forward to some sort of breakthrough. So the tensions between the 2 countries are likely to continue, but the fact that they talked for the first time in a year is probably a decent sign that there's an effort to not. Oh, there was one other area. So when you have superpowers, that there's always a risk of a miscommunication or a mistake causing like a really, really big problem when you have 2 nuclear powers that have different interests and frosty relationships and bad communication. So I think there was a recommitment to the idea of having a back channel or just a real communication effort to ensure that some sort of mistake or misinterpretation doesn't lead to some really serious consequences. So that's a pretty, so I would say it's probably a pretty important factor, not necessarily business factor per se. But first meeting in quite a long time between the 2 leaders, and even a little bit of joking around. I think it's I think chairman as opposed to president is the title of Xi. And there was a reference to he said, she said, play on the Chinese leader's name. And so they seemed to, it was highly scripted. They seemed to really go out of their way to be cordial. I guess overall pretty good, but frankly, the economic policies, they're going to stay.
Okay, well, thanks for that update. I think I'm actually going to round out the show with a bit of good news on the childcare front. Obviously, here at SBM, we have advocated for good childcare policy in order for employees to have access to good, affordable, reliable childcare, but also to engage employers in what we see as sometimes a barrier to acquiring talent within the workforce. So yesterday, Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist and the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs made an announcement that the Caring for My Future goal of opening 1,000 new childcare programs occurred a year earlier than planned. A reminder that the Caring for My Future was a $100 million investment to help Michigan families find that more quality and affordable childcare. It was announced in May of 2022 by Governor Whitmer to set up that goal of 1,000 new childcare centers by the end of May 2024. And so the fact that this investment has worked, that they have seen now 1,089 open as of this month, is encouraging. Reminder that through the Caring My Future program, they're offering navigators in order to better navigate the system within state government to achieve licensing issues that people may encounter. They have facility improvement grants, pre-licensure and startup funding, business development tools, and then also how to support and recruit and develop staff in order to keep people in this field. And so we are just so happy to see that this kind of program that we have supported is working. We feel very confident that the leadership in Lara is one that is going to get people access to these important supports. And so with that, we will round out our show. It's been great to be with you this week. Sarah Miller will return to co-pilot alongside Brian on Monday, but we hope you have a great weekend. And that's all for today.
Thanks, everybody. See you on Monday.